Well, welcome to part two of our convention Bible study under the theme One Body, Many Parts. I hope you guys are enjoying the convention as much as I am. President Walton and his team have just outdone themselves with some outstanding content for us. And so I hope that you're tuning in for the entire convention. But for our Bible studies, for the first part of it, we looked at how believers belong to one another. And I used the example of my sister's car accident, of our family belonging together, coming together, using our many parts to get Monica through what is still a difficult situation as we speak. She's physical therapy and all those kind of things. We're thankful she's walking. We're thankful she's talking. But it's going to be a long road. And we looked at how believers belonging together, coming together, can make a difference for the gospel. And so now that since we've been prayed in, let's just dive in. So in high school, I want to tell you a story. In high school, I was actually able to be in the marching band. And even though I had started playing flute in 5th grade, I was actually able to be part of the marching band in high school because then, you have the pep rallies and the sports teams, you have football games. Well, what was so fun about high school band was football season. I was on the rifle corps, so I got to twirl the rifles. And in concert season, I played the flute and the piccolo. And I don't know if you know too much about high school bands or their programs, but every year our band entered what was called the UIL competition. And it's all the schools around Texas that are the same level, whether it's 5A, 4A, 3A, would meet together at a particular place around the state and compete against each other to be considered to be one of the best bands. And there was judges that would rate us and the whole bit. Well, one particular year, UIL competition rolled around. And we got down to Galveston. All the other bands were there. It was nerve-wracking. And we did great on the concert part of it. We played a piece that we knew well and, frankly, slam dunked it. Then came the sight reading portion of the competition. And what that is basically the band walks into an auditorium and takes their places at the seats set up for them. And the only thing in front of them is a stand that has a piece of music on it that's been turned upside down, been turned over so that you can't see what it is. And the band director's in the same position. And the only, he has the music turned over. He can't see the piece picked, doesn't know what's coming. So when we walked in, the only people in the audience was the line of judges, which is just nerve-wracking. Can I just say that as a high school kid, But we walked in, and when the judge gave the nod, the band director could walk us through the piece of music for 2 to 3 minutes before we were expected to play it for the judges. And so when the judge gave the nod, we all turned over our piece of music. And the director, in 2 to 3 minutes, had to cover that entire piece of music to kind of give us a roadmap of what was coming so that we would be prepared. He would at the beginning say, okay, this is our key signature. We're playing in the key of E flat. This is our time signature. We're in 3/4. Let's keep it together. On page 2, you see that we have a time change. It goes to 4/4. Make sure we hit that. On page 3, it has a place where it gets really soft to piano and then explodes into forte. Make sure you pay attention to that. And so he goes through the whole piece of music, and when the judge thinks it's time, he nods and says, okay, it's time for you to play. And the band is expected to perform the piece of music they literally just saw 2 minutes ago. This particular year, we got to the time to play, and about we were doing okay. It wasn't bad until about halfway through the piece of music, and the percussion section got off. For some reason, the snare drum was playing one part, and the timpani was playing in another place, and the bass drum was playing in another place. And the train wreck that happened was just inevitable, because it was fascinating to kind of break it down later, because it wasn't funny at the time to any of us, because we were just mortified, because we all ended up in different places at the end of the song. It was just horrible. I think there was a lone oboe with a just playing at the end like a solo, and there was no music there. But what happened when we looked at it later is that different sections in the band had decided to follow different pieces in the percussion section. The flutes had decided to follow the snare drum. the clarinets had decided to follow the timpani, and the whole brass section was following the bass drum. And so listening to the playback, you could hear that the different sections were on the beat with their instrument, but nobody was together. Nobody was together because there were different beats in different places, and it just caused confusion instead of reaching the end at once in a beautiful piece. So why tell you that story? Because that's what really Paul was addressing in 1 Corinthians 12. When he saw the disunity of the church that he had spent 18 months setting up and working with Priscilla and Aquila and people set up the church leave, he gets this report that there's disunity in the church. That basically there are different sections in the church following different drummers. You know, this section was following Paul, and this one Jesus, and this one Apollos, and this one Cephas. And Paul was basically saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You're supposed to leverage your differences, the flutes, the clarinets, the bassoon, the saxophones, whatever it is, you're supposed to leverage those differences to be on beat together for the sake of the gospel. But instead, you're letting these differences pull you apart into separate camps. And basically what Paul was saying is, you're mismanaging your most important asset apart from the gospel, and that's people. People. Because we are the mouthpiece for the gospel. We are to act like our Savior, and how many of us actually do that all the time? And what Paul was saying is, they're so worried about their own agenda that they're not really concerned about following Jesus in a cohesive, unified way to be able to do what we're supposed to do, and that's to get the gospel to the ends of the earth. And so Paul writes them and says, oh, okay, this is a train wreck. You know, we need to regroup here and get back on the same beat and realize that our most important asset is people, and we need to be getting along. Now, for the past 30 years, I have worked in a global law firm. We have offices all over the world, and we have clients all over the world. And I've noticed an interesting trend in the past few years or so. And that trend basically is that companies have shifted their thinking in understanding what their most valuable asset is. And they've come to a terminology for what they consider to be their most valuable asset. And it's called human capital. Human capital. And let me give you the definition for that because it's pretty fascinating. Human capital addresses management of a company's human resources and includes issues such as diversity, inclusion, labor practices, corporate culture, employee health, employee safety, and employee compensation. So what we've seen in the past few years is this general shift in the fact that the companies, and these are Fortune 100 companies I'm talking about. These are the top 100 companies on the globe. These companies are realizing that their most important asset, in some cases, is being mismanaged. You know, a company's bottom line, financial bottom line, isn't the most important thing. That they're realizing that unless they have people in place to help that bottom line be what it needs to be, they need to be nurturing their people instead of nurturing a bottom line. And it's just a whole different way of thinking. And it's no longer really too much of how many stocks are floating on the stock market, the bottom line of finances, although those are important in companies. We can't disregard those. But what they've realized is that human capital is what is actually the most important asset. And what's interesting to see, you can actually see this if you read proxy statements from companies, that company shareholders are now requesting disclosures in this area of human capital. And they're requesting disclosures in areas like this. Demographics. How many of our employees are full-time, part-time, or contract workers? What are we looking at as far as the composition of our people? Are they permanent people or are they transient people? Now, doesn't that sound like Paul in Corinth? How many are permanent? How many are just passing through doing trade? Stability is another question that company shareholders are asking. Our employees, is there a huge turnover rate? You know, because if there's a huge turnover rate, there's something wrong. Because what is true of a lot of Fortune 100 companies is that they have long-term employees. If it's a Fortune 100 company, it's a very slim chance that that company has yearly turnover on their top executives. They are long tenured employees, and even staff people employed long term. And so company shareholders are asking, what's the stability? Are the employees' needs getting met so they can be the most productive they can be while they're on the job working for us? Another question they're asking is composition. The composition of our workforce. What does our workforce look like? Is it diverse to meet the diverse needs of the company, to meet the needs of their customers? What is the race? What is the gender? What is the age? What is the composition of our employees? They're also asking about skills and capabilities. Has the company actually invested time to identify the skills and gifts and even passions of employees? Do we have someone stuck in accounting who actually is a visionary and needs to be on the board of directors? Shareholders are asking, have you taken time to find out about your employees so we can leverage the gifts they have, the skills they have for the better of the company? And if their skills are lacking, maybe that means we need some training. So how about we apply that human capital theory to the body of Christ, to the church? Can you see some similarities there? Because apart from the gospel, the human capital is the most important asset that the church has. Because we're the ones that are the mouthpiece of the gospel. With our hands and feet, our service, our mouths, our eyes and ears and hands and feet and all those things that Paul was talking about, we are the church. We need to be unified, diverse, but unified in one purpose, using the skills and gifts. Paul was looking at a diverse trade city in Corinth. We today in the LCMS, we are looking at a diverse church body. Are we leveraging the human capital for the gospel? Or are we busy setting up camps, marching to the beat of a different drum? That's what we have to be aware of. Just a few verses before our text, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, 4-6, he says this: "Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who empowers them all in everyone." A diverse church needs diverse people to reach different demographics. Are we taking the time to ask people what they're passionate about? What has God gifted them? Or do we just stick them in a ministry and say that that's your job? Do we have someone as a parking attendant who really has a gift with children? Not that one or the other is better. Are we utilizing people's gifts in a place that fulfills the gifts they've given them to leverage the gospel? The people at my home church who are on the parking team, they're like their own little, it's all guys, and they're like their own group of like, men, they're out there, they're like looking after people, making sure they're coming in from the rain and, greeting them, handshaking, all this kind of stuff. And you can tell that those gentlemen love what they do. They're parking attendants, they're greeters, but they are the first impression that people have when they come to our church. They love their job. And let me tell you what, if they didn't, people coming in can tell. So what about your church? Are you leveraging the diverse church needs with the diverse church body? And, maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but we need to embrace our uniqueness to march to the beat of one drum. If you're a piccolo, trill away. If you're a trombone, slide away. But we all march as one to the beat of a holy drummer. And we need to make sure that beat is Jesus Christ. We are different. Believers are different. But we leverage those for the sake of the gospel. We leverage those to do what God has given us to do, and that is to spread his message of hope and love, forgiveness, grace, salvation to the end of the earth. I realize that we're in strange times right now, and it may feel like we are sight-reading blind. I know that I have felt those days where you turn over the day and you just don't even know what's coming. But you know what? We have a holy conductor who does. He's up there conducting his church, saying, hey, just so you know, there's something coming down the road here. You need to be aware of a time change or a key change, or man, there's an accidental there. You need to look for that. It's time to get softer here. It's time to get louder here. We have a holy conductor, a heavenly conductor in Jesus Christ, and by his Spirit, he keeps us all on the same beat. To God be the glory. We're different, But that's a good thing, as long as we keep it focused on the one thing, the main thing, and that is Jesus Christ. God's blessings to you all. I will see you in lesson 3.